Another game week, another assist for Nuno Tavares, and of course, another red card for Panama. Welcome to the Anglo-Italian pod. As always, my name is Rory, and I'm joined by my very good friends, Adam and Andrea. Andrea, how you doing, man?
Doing a bit better today. I think yesterday I felt so tense the whole day, whole night, and I'm still recovering. I feel like I played the full 90 yesterday when Fiorentina played Milan.
I tell you what, it was hectic. It was a hectic game. There's plenty for us to get our teeth into for that one. But we're just delighted that we're able to have you after a Fiorentina win. It's been a while in the coming, but it's here now.
It's here, yeah.
Adam, how you doing, man?
Keeping very well, thank you. Temperatures are starting to plummet slowly but surely. But yeah, keeping very well nonetheless. And we were blessed with the amount of goals that we had in Serie A this weekend, weren't we?
It just feels like every weekend at the moment, there's lots of 3-2s, lots of goal fests. There's a cheeky 5 from Atalanta this weekend, so plenty for us to talk about and to bask in. But very quickly, we need to talk about the big headline. Paul Pogba is back, or will be back very soon. Set to return around Christmas time, I think it is, that his ban is finally up. Maybe unsurprisingly to most, Juventus are kind of not keeping him on. I personally think there's a bit of a missed opportunity. I know that there's a bit of like bad blood between the two parties now, but I feel like if there was some way to reconcile that, maybe there would be a place in that midfield for Pogba and he could perform an important role. Andrea, do you think there's just too much water under the bridge now and it's just easier for them to go their separate ways?
I think it certainly feels the case, but I'm kind of agreeing with you, actually. I feel like it could be like that one last push. Maybe he could help them get over the line of a trophy, just to kind of give this different kind of aspect for the team. And yeah, I think it's a missed opportunity. I think because Juventus aren't likely going to win the league. Champions League, is going to be a stretch. Mm-hmm. So the Coppa Italia, for example, he could be the difference maker. And you never know how good he does, and you might want to keep him on a bit longer or whatever. But just to have him available, I feel like it's a missed opportunity to lose him. But at the same time, it just feels like there's been too many complications. So I can completely understand why they just want it to end it.
Mm-hmm. Well, a big part of it as well, Adam, I think, is the wages, right? They're quite keen to get his wages off the bill. It looks like he's going to be heading to the MLS. That seems quite likely. Are we excited to see Pogba stateside?
I don't know. I would say possibly, but we don't know what to expect with Pogba. And also, I think an element of that is to do with his fitness. He just seems to really be fragile at moments. So even though I remember when he was kind of reintroduced to the Juve squad, he seemed to kind of stop-start, really, in terms of his kind of playing time there. So it'll be interesting to see which team decides to go for it and take him on. I'd be very surprised if there's many teams. Potentially, maybe a Saudi team might be interested in bringing him across, maybe do some dabs, I don't know. But certainly, I don't know what else he can offer, Rory.
Well, I tell you what, if Paul sees that incredible video from Pioli's win with Al Nassr, I think, with the incredible atmosphere in the half-empty stadium as they desperately tried to get people to sing along to Pioli is on fire. If that doesn't attract Paul Pogba to Saudi Arabia, I don't know what will. But guys, we are going to take a very quick break, and when we come back, we are going to be talking all things Game Week 7 in Serie A. And here we are, Game Week 7 in Serie A, and there are so many goals, so many games for us to discuss, but we're going to start with Andrea's beloved Viola, as they got a huge win at home, taking on Milan with a 2-1 win, and where do we even start with this game? 3 penalties saved, just absolutely incredible. Andrea, has your heart rate slowed down yet?
Definitely not. I'm still thinking about the penalties that were given. I can't believe it. It was horrendous. And I think it's a shame because I think it overshadowed, for once, a Fiorentina performance where I could actually be proud and say that was a great performance. Mm-hmm. And you could kind of see. And I'm quite proud of the manager as well for the tactic change as well. And you can kind of see the stylistic play. And I think to give him credit is the fact that he's starting to stick to a certain lineup now. Where I still debate some of the selections like Cataldi, I still think playing that same 11, it's going to build the chemistry and, and hopefully build a bit more consistency as well. But it was overall, it was a great performance, and I think defensively looked a lot more solid. I think Milan didn't create as much chances, or it could be to the extent that they didn't play as good as they could have. But I certainly think Fiorentina were able to shut them down a lot in the final third. But overall, I think it was just a mess of a game at the same time, and I think it did take over. But we've got to appreciate David De Gea, of course. What a goalkeeper. And it still drives me crazy how Terracciano was starting ahead of him. I said as soon as he signed, he should have been on the pitch. Like he's a winner. You know, he's a leader. He has everything as a top goalkeeper. Even though he hasn't played for a year, he's got everything. And you know, those saves just highlight. You know, on his day, he can win you games, and he won us that game in the end. Despite us playing well, he made those saves in penalties, but also reflex saves as well. He's one of the best I've ever seen in recent years who can do that as well. But yeah, overall, it was a great game, but boy, the refereeing decisions have to be talked about because they were terrible. Even the penalty they gave us, I think Dodo's one was really harsh as well. I would be annoyed if I was a Milan fan. So yeah, unfortunately that overshadowed it, but very happy with the Fiorentina performance at least, and yeah, it was really good to see.
Well, I want to talk to you about the tactical switch. So we went from a back three to a back four with Gosens and Dodo as the wing backs, and then Ranieri and Camuzzo, who I think Camuzzo is a player that a lot of people are very excited about as well. Like, why do you think that was so much more effective in terms of allowing Fiorentina to build up? Because they did just look a lot more solid.
I think it gave the opportunity now for the Fiorentina midfield to have an extra player, an extra man midfield. You now see Colpani coming deep, even Goodmanson coming deep as well. There's more interlink between the midfield and the attack, and I think we're seeing that more of a flow. Whereas I think when we were playing three at the back, because the midfield's so short, we were forced out wide a lot, and it ended up just being crossing into the box looking for Keane. But when you have technically gifted players like Colpani and Goodmanson, you've got to use them through the middle, and I think that, and we saw that again yesterday, and you also see as well the goal in the end that came through right through the middle. And you can go direct as well, which is amazing because you've got someone like Keane who can cause havoc, and that's what happened in the end, even though it was a Tomori mistake. But I think systematically, it allows that extra man in midfield, but also it gives a lot of pressure off the defence on its own, because I feel with a three-back defence, a lot of pressure is on them, and we've kind of already seen quite a few of them kind of fumble under the pressure, like Pongracic can't even get looking now, and he was meant to be the Milenkovic replacement. Looks like Komutsu now is the replacement. And to be fair, Komutsu, I've been quite impressed with him. Like, he seems very commanding, reads the game well. He's still got a long way to go, but I'm liking what I'm seeing at the moment, to be fair. But yeah, I think that's the key aspect. I think the three was never going to work, and I think we've covered this before. It was because the centre-backs we have just don't have the quality to do that three at the back. And I think, you know, now we've got two central defenders that can do the job and they can rely on the midfield to kind of take the ball forward instead of the three defenders having to do that, having to play the extra step. So I think that's the main difference.
Well, it definitely paid off. It was a much more assured performance from Fiorentina. I was really very impressed by a lot of the players. My favourite, Eduardo Bove, had an incredible game as well. He was absolutely everywhere on the pitch. He could not... You know, like every time you looked, he was doing something. He was in the right place. He was harrying. He was pressing. Absolutely incredible performance from him. But Adam, we do need to talk about the refereeing decisions, because I think sometimes with my more Premier League focused life, I think that a lot of the referees are desperate to give penalties in the Premier League. And then I look at Serie A and I'm like, no, they love giving penalties in Serie A, right? Like, yeah. I think none of these were a penalty, right? But once you give the first one, you have to give all the ones after that, right?
Yeah, I think for a consistency point of view, I think you do have to give them. However, I'm much in agreement that they were very debatable, a lot of them. And when you kind of, I suppose, contrast, I think the previous day we saw in the Inter-Torino match, a very similar circumstance where it was definitely a penalty. It was Hakan Çalhanoğlu fouling Adam Messina in the area. But I think that set the precedent in terms of how this was given, because I think just because of the nature of the way that was given as a penalty, this was having to be kind of followed. But I would say it was kind of followed very loosely in the very context. I mean, the first one, for example, looked suspects at the very least, but then followed on by the further ones that we've experienced. So yeah, I think there's a lot of question marks about the referee on the day itself, but Andrea won't care because De Gea did save those penalties, and ultimately, if Moses Kane could have put his away, then you could have been looking at a much more handsome scoreline there for Fiorentina. But the penalties, what can we say? Definitely not penalties, I would say, in other leagues for sure.
Yeah, it was a bizarre refereeing performance. I have to say, Moise Kean was so unlucky to finish this game without a goal. The late break on as well, where he absolutely wellied that against the crossbar. I don't think he could have hit it any harder if he'd tried. It was an unbelievable strike. Just so unlucky that it came off the crossbar. I thought, but his hold-up play throughout the game, I was really impressed. I feel like it's something that he's really developed. Like in the past, I think he was a little bit lightweight. But now you can see he's bulking up a bit. He's able to hold off defenders and bring other players in. This relationship that could build between him and Gudmundsson, I think, is quite exciting, with Gudmundsson running from deep, like you said, Andre, and kind of backing him up. I thought that was really impressive. And of course, Yassine Adli scoring against his parent club, because, football is just like that. Another player I really like, I thought he played very well, and it was a nice little finish, that. But Adam, let's talk about Milan. A little bit disappointing going forward. Obviously, the really beautiful finish from Pulisic with an incredible ball into the box as well, but just an incredible finish. But I feel like they aren't really making goalkeepers work. Like De Gea, obviously beyond the penalties, made one or two saves, but they're not quite getting that shot on goal. They're not getting that last little touch, right?
Yeah, I think it's just a quality into the box. I think that was what really disappointed from a Milan perspective. Because if you look at the amount of shots they did have in total, there was about 16 shots. The problem was that what you kind of classify as maybe like the big chances, they only had really 3. And looking at the XG as well, they're creating the opportunities. So it just felt like on the day, it was just being able to kind of make those chances really count when they were in the area. I didn't necessarily, in this match, when you kind of look back, I didn't necessarily feel like Morata or Abraham contributed as much. And, they're well known for kind of terrorizing defenses in terms of not giving them time to think. But I didn't ever feel that during the course of the match. I felt like Fiorentina coped with their kind of attacks quite admirably. And if anything, it was kind of those deep-lying midfielders that, the likes of Reinders, Pulisic, that you had to be more wary of from a Fiorentina point of view. And that's probably why Palladino went with Bove to kind of nullify that kind of threat. I think when you look at the way that they approached it, I think that's probably a question mark, maybe perhaps from Fonseca in terms of maybe thinking outside the box. What could he do? Potentially maybe the use of the fullbacks potentially to push the Fiorentina wing-backs a bit more. But otherwise, generally, it seems like, just the quality of chances weren't there for Milan. And on the day, I think Fiorentina did really well to cope with it, considering the circumstances, especially when you think Ranieri tangles with legs with Pulisic in the box and gives away that penalty initially. I think that was the only really big chance that I could remember in the first half from a Milan perspective. So that says a lot. So I think that's quite well done by Fiorentina generally in terms of their game plan.
Yeah, I feel like they handled Leao and Pulisic very, very well. I feel like Leao had one of his typical kind of quite frustrating performances where he's just not quite able to get that final ball into the box, not quite as exciting as he could be. But I think another interesting talking point, I hope, here is the managers, because this is obviously a huge win for Palladino, right? And Adam, I'm going to ask you about where this leaves Fonseca, but Andrea, how big is this win for Palladino now? Because obviously the whispers were starting to become not quite shouts, but people talking quite affirmatively about his future. Just how big a win is this for Palladino?
I think it's massive because I think it's kind of changed the mindset on him because the win was that convincing, and it was better all round, and I think him recognizing what wasn't working and adjusting to it, sticking into an 11 now that he feels is the right one, and they've won, convincingly against Milan, who was still a really good team. I think obviously that puts him in a really good light. So I think it's absolutely massive, especially going into the international break, because if you mess up with an international break, those are the type of ones where talks happens behind the scenes, But yeah, no, I think he needed that massively. But again, it's about consistency. So we're seeing it now in the tactic and the team selection. We just now just need to see it in the results, because you can't go and beat Milan and then go to Lecce away in a few weeks' time and drop points, because the questions will come back again. So I don't think he's completely out of it yet, but that win definitely puts it in the right way.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. The international breaks, it's narrative setting for 2 weeks worth of headlines in newspapers, isn't it? Like, it just defines everything. So it's absolutely huge for him. But Adam, for Milan and Fonseca, after the Derby win, obviously it felt like they would really kick on and they would really kind of start putting a marker down. Now, obviously, a 3-0 win against Lecce is a 3-0 win against Lecce, fine. But an okay performance in Leverkusen, only losing 1-0, but then this result here, where do you think this leaves Fonseca? I think people are still massively unconvinced, and that Derby win feels like a kind of motivational achievement more than a tactical masterclass, right?
Yeah, it does feel like that at the moment on the grand scheme of things. I think they were unlucky against Leverkusen when you look back on the highlights as well, because I think, they had their moments in the game, just weren't maybe pushing the game as much as they probably would have wanted to. But yeah, I think there's still question marks defensively with this Milan squad. In particular, Tomori, I feel like he's been suspect, in particular against this game in Fiorentina. He was very questionable in terms of that decision. Even with the kind of direct ball that De Gea kind of gives for that second goal, Tomori really struggles to deal with it. And I think that plays a huge part in terms of that solidity that they're trying to build on. They change formation, change the kind of personnel, and they're trying to find the right kind of combination at the moment. I suspect maybe Fonseca is still kind of looking at what he can do broadly with this team. But I think the Milan board will still give him time, given the circumstances. I just think, obviously, maybe it's just a question of building some momentum in the next few games. I can see they've got obviously Udinese, then Club Brugge, followed by Bologna away, before, again, a really big game at the San Siro against Napoli. So, it's going to be important that they at least try and take some points against Bologna, which I anticipate they probably could do, and also Udinese. So, but I'm not going to say they're going to be easy games, because we know they seem to struggle against those games that they should take points from.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it goes, but a bruising defeat for Milan, a boisterous or motivating win for Fiorentina, and just an all-round great game. And just one more mention for David De Gea making 2 penalty saves. I did see a very funny Man United fan on Twitter tweet, "Every day the Lord finds a new way to mock us." And today is David De Gea saving 2 penalties in one game. Absolutely incredible scenes. But Andrea, you're right. As a shot stopper, he's absolutely world class. It's unbelievable. And what a signing for Fiorentina. So delighted with that result. And Serie A Sunday evenings, it was nice to see a proper blockbuster. I feel like we've missed them for a while. That was a real blockbuster. But Fiorentina 2, Milan 1, done. Let's move on to the next one, and we're going to talk about... should we do Inter Torino? This was another evening game, lots of goals and some daft penalties. A deserved red card. Adam, take us through this one. Thuram with a hat trick. That's 7 goals for him this season now. He's looking pretty good, right?
Yeah, I mean, I reflected that, he can have his kind of hot spells. It's just a question of getting consistency right with him. But I mean, certainly what helped, I think, in this match was that Inter and Inzaghi had been working on the kind of defensive aspects, making sure that they took full advantage of their kind of what they've been famed for, which is the kind of centre backs going a bit more into the attacking third a lot more. And you saw that with Bastoni in particular, taking advantage from that left-hand side and delivering the opportunities on the set plays, and opportunities for Marcus Thuram to really make the most of. I think that's what we've been missing this season, is his kind of threat as a target man, and as well as his physical presence in the box. And he took full advantage, but I suppose it was given in terms of it made a lot easier through the Maripan sending off in the first half. terrible challenge by Maripan because, yeah, I mean, that could break his ankles quite easy. And this is Marcus Thuram in the process as well. But we have to say also, Torino gave it as good as they could as well, even with 10 men down, because there was a great shot before that moment by Ricky, testing Jan Sommer into goal. So I think there's a bit of credit to Torino as well because, they were no pushovers. They certainly gave as good as they could in this game. But yeah, fantastic kind of hat-trick by Marcus Thuram. The third one was a bit like type of goal that you'd see in a school playground, for example, the way it kind of bounced over Milinkovic-Savic in the goal. But yeah, a word for Zapata here. Great goal, but then gets himself injured, unfortunately. When I saw it, I was like, yeah, he's gone for a while, and unfortunately it's been confirmed for 7 months that he'll be out. So that gives a little bit of a hole for Torino in terms of that attacking threat because he was so good for them this season. And I think one of the reasons why they've done so well. But, Rory, we might be blessed with a certain replacement, right?
Well, this is, the storyline is written, isn't it, really? The rumour is that they are looking to draft in the great Mario Balotelli as he is currently without a club. What I would say is that Zapata is like, the captain, the leader, as well as your best striker. Balotelli might be your best striker, but I don't know if he's captain or leader material. So don't use him as a complete replacement. But for the narrative alone, it would be delightful to see him in a Torino shirt. I can absolutely imagine it. Get a winner in the Turin derby to finally deliver a win over Juve. I think we need it. I think we need it. But on a serious note, I think for Zapata, it's such a shame because he's not as young as he used to be now. And this is an injury that kind of can really set you back. And he's a player that has been so important for Torino, as you alluded to, Adam. And being the captain, being that focal point, it was a really prolific finish. It was such a powerful, clinical finish. And he's been in great form, and you just hope that this doesn't derail Torino's season a little bit. It'll be interesting to see how many minutes Shea Adams gets going forward now. Is he going to try and take up that role now? He seems like he's going to be the replacement. But yeah, Andrea, were you impressed with Torino staying in this game? Because once they went down to 10 men so early, I thought at the San Siro against Inter, this could be 5-6. But they really they dug in. Off the ball, I think they're fantastic anyway. The way that they counter press and hold their shape, I think is really impressive. Were you impressed by they still managed to give Inter a proper game?
Yeah, I was very impressed, and I think, as you alluded to, I think the structure and the style they play just was consistent, even with a man down. I think Ricci is such an amazing player. Honestly, I don't know how he's still there, but he's unbelievable. Not no disrespect to Torino though, but no. But he's such a good player. But I mean, they create chances, and and this is what you were alluding to with Zapata, and he's so clinical. So it's such a shame, and I do worry about them going forward without Zapata scoring those goals. Only thing I'd be disappointed with Torino is the goals they conceded. Both goals were from crosses in the box. It's just that typical bread and butter saying stuff. It's you've got to deal with those. So it's a shame to concede like that. If you lose a goal on an overlap or you just outnumbered, fair enough. But when you concede like that, it's a bit frustrating, especially when you've got some big players in the box to clear your lines. But yeah, that was my only thing I'd say. I'd be disappointed with Torino. But to be fair, you're against the champions, and no matter how they've been quite fragile this season, they're still such a dominant force. And like you said, it could have easily been 5 or 6, but no, they kept it as close as possible, and even bringing it to 3-2, and it could have, you never know, on another day got the 3-3, you never know. But other than that, I think they did well.
No, I think you're right. The defenders were super flat-footed on both the crosses. They were just kind of stood there as Thuram, and look, he's got a hell of a leap on him. It was great to see him as a threat in the air, but I did think myself, there's no one challenging him. There's no one kind of putting pressure on him. So it was a little bit disappointing. But Torino kind of will take they'll take that as we're moving in the right direction. But Adam, I want to talk to you about Inter, because I think they've still here. I feel like every week we're talking about Inter win, but we're talking about them not being good. And we're like,
Yeah.
they've won, but. And I feel like here, it's still, they've won, but they just haven't got that defensive solidity they ever had. I feel like as a team, they're not getting back quick enough. Like in the past, and even against City, what was so outstanding about that performance was that they got back in numbers, they got forward in numbers, and it was like all the kind of symbiotic movement, right? They were all knew exactly what was. Now, there's a few pieces missing here, right? Barella's not in the midfield anymore. There's a few players injured. They're still not really settled on that back three. But why do you think it is that off the ball, they just seem to not be as defensively solid as in the past?
Maybe they've kind of taken their foot off the gas. I think there's a bit of arrogance there that perhaps, I think that stems to last season where basically they didn't have a natural challenger for them. And I think they've just been very relaxed about the approach. I mean, you could see it a bit in the derby where I think they had the mentality that they could steamroll Milan. They knew how bad they were, and it didn't matter that they had to play so many games in the build-up to this. They kind of still felt that they had the quality. And I think perhaps maybe they need to go back to their core fundamentals, which made them hardworking, made them kind of really, I suppose, exciting, because they were kind of just playing free-flowing football, but they have kind of come to a point where they're now having to rotate the squad a lot more often. You could see it in the substitutions that are being made. So I think there is naturally a concern. Inzaghi alluded to it in the press conference. He's still not happy at the fact that they've conceded another 2 goals here in the process. I think when you look back, I was trying to calculate the amount of goals, but I make it as 10 goals that they've conceded this season. So yeah, I mean, that's a hell of a lot of goals to concede at this point in the season, given it was 7 games in. So yeah, it's a bit of a concern. And I think if you look at the back line, they've not had a solid back line for the duration of the season. So I think that plays a part in terms of the fundamentals, because you've always had a solid foundation with the midfield generally, and up top you kind of guaranteed who's going to play. So I think it's probably at the back that they need to establish it. But I think it's just going back to fundamentals. They aren't doing the basics really well as they used to. And I think they just need to ensure that they're doing that consistently. That's the key thing. I mean, especially now that we've got a challenger in Napoli who look like they're going to push whoever's going to be in that position by January onwards. So I think that's probably something on the back of Inzaghi's mind, is that they need to address these kind of things now before they play the big teams, because in a few weeks' time, Inter have got to play Juventus. Now, if they only share a point there, that's another kind of drop point scenario for Inzaghi. So he can't afford to have that kind of going into that kind of December period. So yeah, I think it's just the fundamental basics that they're really lacking on at the moment, Rory.
Yeah, Inzaghi made similar comments this week after the game and was like, we just need to go back to what we were doing and find that team spirit again and find the togetherness, because it just doesn't feel quite as smooth. It's just not something I saw coming after how well they performed in Manchester. It's just not something I thought like, okay, now they're hitting their straps. Now they're like really right into let's go. And it just didn't really fall like that. So I think, they just need to find, as you said, go back. Well, they've got Roma away next, and Roma seem to be handing points to everyone at the minute, so that might help. But we will see. There's, of course, an international break in between them. But let's move on from Inter 3, Torino 2. What a game that was. And let's go to, you've talked about them, Adam, so let's talk. Inter are currently 2 points behind them with 14 points as Napoli sit top of the table. 16 points and a 3-1 win over Como on the Friday afternoon, right? And, well, it got off to a flyer. 25 seconds, McTominay has taken over Naples. They're going absolutely mad about Scott McTominay. They can't, honestly, people are falling in love with him. Marek Hamšík has been quoted, I think it was after the game, as saying, he is my natural heir. Napoli have done incredible, talk about putting pressure on someone, right? But he said, Napoli have done some incredible business here. I really like the type of player he is, and I can see me in him. Andrea, 25 seconds, Scott McTominay, I love that it's another Man United player doing so well the second he leaves the club, but he's made that role in the midfield his own instantly, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Quite amazing as well. It's just how much he can be expressive in his role, which I'm very surprised about. I thought it would be he'd have some limitations, but certainly going forward, he has some sort of freedom to kind of express himself, and he's really adding to the firepower up top, to be honest. And yeah, I love seeing it, and I'm not surprised. He's doing everything perfect. His passing, his shoot, everything about him. He's just on fire at the moment, and yeah, I love to see it. I hope it continues. Like he's just such a good player to watch at the moment.
No, I'm just like super happy for him. I love it when a British player comes over and absolutely like, well, a Scottish player, I don't know which way he lies, Scottish/British player comes over and does so well. And he kind of turns that front three into a front four by just sheer will and running power. But Adam, they did go on to win 3-1. And yet again, Lukaku gets 2 assists and a goal. Look, I know people forever talk about Conte and Lukaku, but it's just mad. All of a sudden, he's holding defenders off. He's got that physicality. He's got that determination. And obviously, he gets the penalty here, but even the assist, like the way he holds off the defender for the Neres goal as well, we're seeing proper performances from Lukaku here in a real, like, leading the line, leading the team performances, right?
Definitely. I mean, it is something between Conte and Lukaku. They seem to just strike up this relationship that, either Conte just trusts him, and he embodies like his style of football in some respects, but I think he just gets the very best out of him. I can't really put my fingers to what he does differently that other coaches have struggled in the past. I really don't know what to say, but, when you look at the way like Lukaku held off his defenders for both of the assists. So the first one with Scott McTominay, but also, as you allude to, David Neres, it was phenomenal. It's the kind of like accolades in terms of what Lukaku was built up for before he made that move to Man United when he was at Inter. It was so strange to kind of see that he's able to reproduce that again after the amount of setbacks that Lukaku's had since then. And I think a lot of credit is to Conte because he's now instilling that confidence throughout the squad. The fact that he's being able to adapt his tactics to accommodate McTominay and almost be the outlet between Lukaku as well, that allows Lukaku less to focus on his kind of running and chasing down because you've got someone that's kind of free will between them. So, I mean, a lot of words was also shared for Lobotka as well in this particular game. I loved the quote from Cesc, which was like, "Mamma mia, the best midfielder in Serie A. I've just witnessed him." That says a lot about how Napoli are playing this season. And, look, I think they made some really astute signings this summer. Buongiorno being another one. Solidifies that back line, which I think was at cause for a lot of the goals last season under various different managers. But yeah, you can see across the club they're together, and I suppose that's the really important thing. So yeah, well done to Conte for getting the very best out of Lukaku because I didn't think it would happen again.
Yeah, he's going to be, well, if anyone's going to deliver it for Napoli this year, he's going to be absolutely key. And they do really look like they can push on. But Andrea, I want to talk to you about Como because they'd won 2 in a row and they kind of obviously going to Naples is always going to be quite tough. But we're seeing marked improvements in their performances now. I thought they looked a little bit naive in the first couple of games. They looked a little bit too easy to play through, but it looks like they're learning lessons quickly, right? And with players like Stafezza, who's got a lot of Serie A experience, it feels like Fabregas is kind of learning on the job quickly and there are definite improvements, right?
Yeah, I have to agree. I think, especially the first few games, they just looked too easy to beat. It was too predictable. Mm-hmm. They're implementing their style of football, which is key, and it could be the big reason why they might stay up this year. But they look like strong that they can. So yeah, definitely. I think in that Napoli game, the only thing I'd criticise would be that first half. I felt like Napoli went flat after they scored early, pretty much that whole first half. I just would love to have seen them kind of push them push them a bit more. But they managed to get the goal, of course. But I feel like they could have got them a bit more. But yeah, I think you are starting to see a style of play that's kind of like consistent throughout, but also causing a lot of problems. It's just whether in a long run it can work out and be consistent. Mm-hmm. And obviously personnel will have to improve because I feel like the personnel still isn't quite right. I don't think in certain positions to kind of push them a bit more further. But for now, yes, absolutely. I think they're on the right track. And it's a great job that Fabregas is doing at the moment. So yeah, they've just got to keep at it. But I'm pretty sure that they'll have a good season.
Yeah, when I look at their 11, it just feels quite heavily loaded towards the front line. Like there's a lot of talent going forward. Like you're looking at like Stafetta, who did very well at Lecce. You got Path, who we said we really like. Cutrone, who's definitely their top scorer this year, right? And like their talisman. But then you go to the back line and the goalkeeper, and you're like, okay, this is what kind of needs to be addressed in January, I think, or this is what needs to be addressed if you stay up. It just feels quite forward loaded, this team, which is a good thing, I suppose. You want to see goals, you want to see attacking play, but I feel like Docena and Moreno isn't the most inspiring, and Aldero as a goalkeeper was fine like 10 years ago, but I'm not sure if he's the guy right now. So, and your backup is Reina, so I feel like that really is something that needs to be addressed. But I was impressed by their performance, despite the fact that they lost 3-1. Like you said, Andrea, they did manage to stop Napoli from running away with it, because as you said, when a team scores in the first minute, you think, okay, how many is this going to be? But they did manage to hold them off until the 50-odd minute, 56th minute, was it? And they did equalise, but yeah, so a little bit more solidity than we saw in the first couple of games. But Napoli still on top, and the fans are daring to dream that maybe they could do it again this year. It would be incredible if Conte just comes in and wins it straight away. Other managers need to have a word about how to stop this guy if he can just come in with any team and win it in the first year. But let's move on to the next game, and let's talk about players haunting their former clubs in horrible ways. Retegui with a hat-trick against Genoa to really stick the boot in what is a pretty horrendous couple of weeks for Genoa. Adam, 2 goal of the season candidates here with Ederson and Darun. Did you have a favourite?
I struggle to work out which one would be my favourite. I like them both. I think Darun, maybe because of the distance, I think it was slightly further out. But Ederson's technique was really good as well, in fairness. So, yeah, I can't moan at either potentially winning it. But, yeah, what a performance. What an incredible performance. I know we kind of alluded to Genoa last or the previous weekend where we kind of speculated about where did they go from here. I think, yeah, there's a lot of question marks now on Gilardino's kind of shoulders. Straight after the game, it was kind of came out that the board will be supporting Gilardino, especially in terms of that January transfer window, which is obviously promising. But I think the key here is to get points on the board. And this wasn't a day that they were going to get points, unfortunately. Golini in goal, helping Retegui in scoring those goals as well in the process. Yeah, it didn't look too pretty from a Genoa perspective. And I suppose the concern is what we said last week is that with the greatest respects, you've got only Vitinha and Pinamonte up front. Malinovsky's injury is going to take its toll because I think he was a big threat in terms of that attacking third play. And then looking beyond that, and I think you're really struggling for that depth. So, yeah, I think there's question marks about where do they go from here. And we know about this group that currently support the Genoa financially, the 777 group. I just don't think they're going to do what we expect them to do. I think there'll be a lot of speculative kind of signings potentially in January. Whether that's going to be enough for Gilardino, I don't know. But yeah, Atalanta, just on the respect of the game itself, I think they showed what they can deliver potentially this season. They just need to work on that consistency right now, Rory.
Yeah. It's always the way with Atalanta. They turn up and just smash a team by 5, and then they'll draw the next game to bottom of the league, and you're just like, oh, for God's sake! So I wasn't surprised by this score, even though it was a big score. I was like, oh, Atalanta are back, but next week it'll be something completely different. I think for Genoa, it's really interesting. Just before I ask you, Andrea, about Atalanta. Because now the rumours are circulating that there are 4 groups that are ready to step in to buy Genoa. One of them is just Fondo PIF, which is like the private investment fund from Saudi Arabia. One of them is an American group, and I can't remember the other 2, but the kind of the favourites at the moment, or the Americans or the Saudis, as to kind of take over this club. But it's kind of looking more and more increasingly likely that Genoa are going to be for sale at some point, which is probably why they're sticking with, one of the reasons why they're sticking with Gilardino as well. It's like, well, we're not going to pay a manager to leave when we might not own the club in 6 months, right? It's just a lot of uncertainty at the moment with Genoa, which doesn't help with things on the pitch, right? It was a terrible performance all round from them. I think they didn't really put up any form of kind of challenge towards Atalanta. But Andrea, for Atalanta, Retegui, I was really, really sceptical when he came into Serie A, and when he got called up for the Italian national team. I thought, my God, Italy are on the bones of their arse if they're going for the Argentinian Premier League, trying to find this guy. But that's now 7 goals and an assist for him in 7 games in Serie A this season. He started 6 of them. He's absolutely flying. Are you surprised by this form, or do you think did you expect him to hit the ground running at Atalanta?
It's a bit of both, because I feel like Atalanta, they create so many chances for the striker, so I'm not too surprised. But having said that, when I've watched him, because obviously I first watched him with the national team, so when I watched him with the national team, you can see that he's got an instinct for goal. Like, he's clinical. Like, he knows how to get a goal. And I think what's kind of elevated him as well this season is I feel like he's added to his game a bit more. I feel like he's a bit more dynamic as well in the final third, where instead of being just a target man kind of striker, I feel like he's added to his game a bit more as well, which helps. But certainly, I don't think it's too surprising, because I think he's got it in him, and I think it was the perfect move for him. And we saw it with Genoa as well. To score the goals he did for Genoa last season was still impressive, And I think he's got everything to be like a clinical goal scorer going forward. It's just just seeing how long it can last. But he does have a knack for it. I really do. And like I said, even just seeing him in like early games or one-off games, you can already have that feel about him. I don't know if you guys feel the same, but that's what I felt about him when I first saw him as well.
It's something I noticed when Arsenal played Atalanta, because obviously I sat and watched that from a completely different perspective as I normally watch Serie A, because they're against my team now and I'm concerned. And one thing I noticed was his movement off the ball is incredible. He never stops moving. He was running in between Saliba and Gabriel the entire game, and just they never knew who was meant to pick him up, who he was closest to. And a lot of Arsenal fans and a lot of Arsenal podcasts that I listened to after the game were like, wow, that guy is super exciting. Like, if he gets a chance, he'll take it. Obviously, he struggled with the penalty, but like his movement and his determination and his energy really, he caused us a lot of problems. I think it's something I noticed in that game that I hadn't really noticed about him before. So yeah, I think just incredible levels. A hat-trick against your old team is always a little bit funny. But for Atalanta, big win. Concerning for Genoa. Do we think... So Genoa suddenly... Well, they're firmly in the relegation zone. They're on 5 points. 1 win, 2 draws, and 4 losses. Goal difference of -10. Lost 3 in a row. Adam, do you think they can stay up this year? I feel like we're seeing a team that are going to kind of whimper out, kind of like Sassuolo did last year.
It's going to be touch and go, I think. It really just depends, I think, on the other teams. I think the other teams have yet to kind of have their kind of combination of the bigger teams to play. So it'll be fascinating to see whether we see 1 or 2 being dragged into it. We did speculate, I think, Bologna being one of them. The form that Monza are in right now, I don't think I'm too... I'd be concerned if I was a Monza fan right now, to be fair. I still think Calgary could still be dragged into it as well. So I think there's still opportunities for Genoa to be getting themselves out of it. For me, it just depends how many points they can get before the January transfer window. They need to get a run of games where they target certain games where they just go for the 3 points. So they're going to need to ensure that their home form brings them through, I think, because from memory last season, I don't think they did as well away from home. So I think it's going to be crucial that they get the points at home. So I think they're going to have to start targeting certain games and getting some wins, because otherwise, come January, I think it's going to be a tough ask.
Yeah, I do have to caveat that with the fact that Genoa have already played this year Inter at home, they've played Roma at home, they've played Juve at home, and they've played Atalanta away. The issue is that they now have to play Juve, Inter and Roma away at some point, but they have also played them at home. So they've not had the easiest fixtures. But Andrea, do you fear for them?
Yeah, I fear for them. Yeah, I think Sassuolo kind of feel of it is a kind of interesting take on it. I think that's what it could come down to, where it's just.
Mm.
Um, but I think it was the recruitment as well. I feel like you lose two big players, and I feel like Pinamonti is a decent player, but he's not that level of quality that you let go. And I think the recruitment has a lot of questioning. And it's funny enough that they're saying, "Oh, January will fix it." Well, I think it should have been done earlier. Um, but it's just whether they get the wins before January, like Adam said. That's the worry. I feel like if they're in a bad position by January, that it could go even worse. But the only thing that could save Genoa is I think there are quite a few other teams that are worse. So they might by default be the less rubbish team.
They're going to do an
Stay
Everton.
up.
They're going to do an Everton.
Yeah, like it could be that. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that wouldn't surprise me either. But yeah, I do fear at the moment. Yeah, it's a bit concerning.
Yeah, it's looking bleak. There was really not much to be happy about with that performance. But let's go to the last game we're going to kind of semi-focus on because I'm very aware of time. And let's talk about Juventus 1, Cagliari 1. While Cagliari finally get a point, Davide Nicola is kind of turning it around. Adam, Vlahovic, my God, so many chances in this game that he should have scored. I'm not sure how Juve didn't win this game. But take us through it. It was quite chaotic for a 1-1.
It was. There was a lot of debates in this one as well because the refereeing decisions were quite suspect as well for both of the penalties that were given away. So obviously the first one being for Juventus, Luperto, the one culprit for this particular incident, and he just jumps up. His arm is in probably what you would deem as an unnatural position, which is a bit harsh given he's just jumping up and it touches his fingertips. But yeah, on the basis that it does touch his fingertips, I don't know in what head that the referee's got it that is somehow stops a goal from happening because it definitely wouldn't have stopped a goal from going in those circumstances. But anyway, he's awarded a penalty and Vlahovic does tuck it away. But yeah, there onwards, you're kind of thinking, right, Juventus has got to close the game. They've got to do something with it. And Vlahovic has a very clear gilt-edge opportunity when Douglas Luiz takes a shot from distance. All he has to do is put it into the other corner and somehow he gets to the other side of the post. So I that sums up Vlahovic for me. I think he's just not good enough. And it does seem to be a confidence thing, but I don't know how much longer you can kind of hide behind this kind of confidence piece. He needs to step up. He needs to really start owning this as a piece. I don't know whether the system works for him. I think maybe he needs someone to work off him a bit more because he's trying almost too hard at times, but then he's not being focused and laser kind of when he needs to be taking those opportunities. But yeah, Razvat Marin then has an opportunity to score from the penalty spot because again Douglas Luiz kind of tangles with the striker who I forgot who it was now, but tangles with one of the Calgary players
Piccoli?
in the box, and yeah, I think it was Piccoli. And yeah, it's given. Again, it's one of those where I just don't think there's much in it personally. I think it's just basically a ball's gone loose. Douglas Luiz is in an unfortunate position and it's given. Razvat Marin takes a fantastic penalty. And then it went end to end. It went end to end in the last kind of couple of minutes. Chico Conceição getting sent off as well in the kind of midst of all of this. Because, yeah, it's deemed that he deliberately tried to deceive the referee. For me, there was, again, nothing in it. I just think he's been pushed. He is pushed, but nothing more. He's not trying to deceptively try and gain something. I can see why a referee might interpret it as that, but I think he went too quickly with the red card. I think he didn't take a moment to think.
Where when I watch football with my dad, he goes, it's either a dive or it's a foul. Like, there's no in between. You're like, no, Dad, it's a little bit more complicated than that. And that referee has just gone, well, it's not a penalty, so dive. Right, you're off. Yeah. And it just seemed like, again, we talked about refs super keen to get that red card was out. He was like sprinting over to give it him as well. Like, he could not wait. He could not wait. But before that, Andrea, I think Conceição is actually having a pretty exciting start to his Juve career. And this was another game where he had some promising moments, right?
Yeah, I like him a lot. I've liked him a lot for a while now. He's looked really good. He looks like a really good player. It makes me question then the whole Nico Gonzalez signing, to be honest, because I feel like
Hmm.
Sal, he's really good in that position. Like he, that's his position, that right hand side.
Yeah.
So I do question that, but yeah, he looked good. And again, I think he was unfortunate because, like you said, he didn't give him a chance to like be like, I weren't claiming for a foul. It's literally the referee's like, yeah, you died, mate. Out, get out. It's just like Conte didn't even have a chance to take a breath and be like, wait, I wasn't complaining.
Yeah.
Like, play on. Like, like
Yeah.
that's unbelievable.
Yeah.
But no, hopefully it doesn't get to his head because, like, it wasn't his fault. It's going to be a shame he's going to miss the next game because of that.
Mm.
But he looks like a really good player. Kind of from the left hand side just looks so dangerous, and he's got a powerful shot on him as well. For his stature, he has a very powerful shot on him. So yeah, he looks like a fascinating player.
Yeah, I think that's quite an exciting little thing for Juve players, Juve fans to get excited about. But dropping points at home to Cagliari is incredibly frustrating. But Adam, Davide Nicola, unbeaten in 2 games.
Yep.
They're flying. Do you reckon he can do it?
In the 2 games that I didn't anticipate them picking up points, he actually goes and does it, doesn't he? Yeah, I mean, look, I think there's a lot of skepticism because David Nicola, when he's bought in when there's like 10 games to go. He's not here for the whole season necessarily. And the last time he was here for the season, Salernitana decided to sack him twice. So
Twice.
and rehire him in the meantime as well. So that says a lot. But yeah, I think he's got the potentials. Look, I think this Calgary squad, we've already alluded to the fact that I think they're just lacking quality of depth of players. But they've got some good determination, grit, and thought process sometimes. And, applied themselves well in this match. But yeah, I think they're just going to have to be clinical at one end and make sure they shut it out at the other. I think they've got a really good goalkeeper in Scuffet as well. I think he really holds on at many times to their opportunities in the matches. So yeah, I think they've got the stimulus of a good side. However, yeah, I think it's just the quality of depth for me. I think, like I said, in the first few pods, I think they're still riding on the success of Ranieri when he got them to stay up that last season. I think that was a massive achievement, and they probably overachieved this season. It's all about trying to build on that, and I think it's going to take time, Rory, but yeah, promising steps for David Nicola.
It's all progress and another week of Pulley not getting abused, so we can all be happy. Elsewhere, to very quickly round off the league, Hellas Verona got a massive win against Venezia, 2-1 win thanks to Joronen, possibly the worst goalkeeper in the league with an own goal in the 81st minute. Udinese got a massive 1-0 win over Lecce. Zamora with an incredible free kick here. Beautiful strike to deliver the win there in Udine. Bologna drew 0-0 with Parma. Koulibaly getting a red card for a horrendous tackle.
Terrible.
Parma, I think that's 5 red cards this year now already. Yeah. Absolutely incredible. Lazio beat Empoli 2-1. Another assist from Nuno Tavares, as we alluded to at the top of the show. Pedro Rodriguez getting a winner in the 84th minute. Kind of goes under the radar how big a signing that guy has been for Lazio since he arrived. And Monza drew 1-1 with Roma. Motta getting an equaliser in the 70th minute. That was the worst game this weekend by some distance, and that includes Bologna 0, Parma 0. That game was absolutely atrocious. But that is your game week 7 in Serie A. Guys, we're going to take a very quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about the Italy squad ahead of the much anticipated international break. And we are back. It is time to discuss the international break. Just when we were getting into the domestic football, it's back. Let's talk about international football. So, a kind of largely expected into Italy squad, but a few surprise call-ups. In defence, he's decided to call up Caleb Akoli from Leicester alongside Gabbia from Milan. There's calls up from Pizzilli from Roma, and of course Daniele Maldini getting his first call up to the squad. A few interesting names here. Adam, I'm going to throw the defenders at you, and I'll throw the other players at you, Andrea. Adam, Akoli and Gabbia, 2 deserved call-ups?
Certainly from a Gabbia point of view, I think his form for Milan has definitely been respected by many commentators, and I think he definitely, for his performance alone against Inter, proves that he can withstand the pressure, especially in the big games. So I think he definitely deserves to be called up into squad. In terms of Colli, I've always liked him from a young age when he came through at Atalanta at the time with Scalvini. I always thought there was something about him. Then he got that loan spell, I think it was to Cremonese at the time, and you're kind of expecting him to maybe push on. But since then, he kind of, flatters to deceive, I think, on occasions. He has a presence about him and certainly got the pace. So potentially maybe there's a thought there as a backup that he's obviously going to be useful for these games, especially maybe the Belgium game. And we did speculate on offline, when you think about the first choice centre backs, which are likely to be Buongiorno, Calafiori, as well as Bastoni, then you need some backups. Now, he didn't call up Federico Gatti for this one, so I think that shocks a lot of people. But yeah, I think this one is definitely a bit of a surprising one, given the kind of circumstance that he's at Leicester City, not necessarily performed well in that defensive line for Leicester City. So yeah, I think this is probably, like we speculated, maybe an eye for the future, maybe just keeping tabs on him, but there's certainly no harm in this process to get him included. I would expect across the two games that Italy will get the results necessary to help them qualify for the next stage. So they should have enough within this squad. But yeah, maybe a bit of a surprise on the Accordi front, definitely.
Nice. And Andrea, for you, Pizzilli from Roma and Maldini from Monza. Pizzilli's had a bit of an impact at Roma, but I'm still slightly surprised by his inclusion. Were you surprised?
I am, and I think the biggest surprise of all is the fact that they're two kind of tough games. I don't know if he actually gets minutes. That's my question. Like, I don't know the point of it. That's my only question. I mean, on the eye, he's played, for the youth level, he's played at all levels, youth-wise. He's only started to get into the Roma team and, showing good signs. He's playing really well. I think I'm not too against it either. I feel like, at least for Spalletti's sake, that, he's doing what he said. He was going to start putting youngsters through, and he's giving opportunities. And I kind of respect that. And he's giving players who are showing form, at least in the squad. And I think I have to respect him for that. And likewise, you can say about Maldini. I think he's been really good for Monza. The Maldini one, I kind of question as well, because, this formation that Spalletti plays, Maldini's more of a winger out wide, really. He's going to be asked to play centrally. I just don't know to the extent of how good of an impact he will have in a kind of a central role. That would be my only question mark. And certainly once players come back like Chiesa, does he get back in the squad? I don't see him back in the squad. So I think it's quite surprising, but Spalletti has said, he just wants to see them play, and that's fair enough. I mean, if he's seen something, if there's, I respect that and he's got to go for it, but I just question the need for it at this moment in time where Italy have actually started to look good and exciting. That France game, I'm still having dreams about it. I'm so like that. Still can't stop thinking about how good that performance was. But it just, a kind of question, is it the right time to start including these type of players? That's the only question I'd have. But fair play to them. They've kind of, in their own way, earned, their call-ups in a sense. But yeah, I do think, I like you said, I do question the legitimacy of the call-up.
Well, it'll be interesting to see, because Italy have two big games. As you talked about, they will be at home against Belgium on Thursday, 20:45 kickoff European time, and at home against Israel on Monday, 20:45 kickoff. Hopefully, they batter both of those teams, one more than the other. We can hope. But guys, that is us done for this week. That is said, Game Week 7. We will be back with some international. We'll find something to talk about for the international football, so join us for that one. Andrea, when our viewers and listeners want to find you, where can they find you online?
Yes, so on the handle Calcio Fiore on TikTok. So lots about Fiorentina, of course, but amongst other things, Serie A and anything about football, really. So you can find me on there.
Nice. Good. Adam, anything to say before I send these people home?
Keep doing your thing, making sure you follow us on our social media accounts. We've been getting some good love on the YouTube channel, some really nice comments. So much appreciated from those that have commented about that, and some finding us for the very first time. So that was really nice as well. So hopefully you can spread the word to many more people so we can get to that 500 subscribers on YouTube. But
Exactly.
I'll leave it at that point, Rory.
Nice. Well, yeah, welcome, guys, and we hope to see you again. You can find us on Twitter at Italian Anglo Pod, on Instagram, TikTok, Threads. I think that's all of them at Anglo-Italian Pod. If you're on YouTube, hit the like and subscribe button down here. If you're listening on your podcast app, please leave us a rating and a comment, a review. It really helps with visibility, so we will be forever in your debt. So thank you for joining us. We will see you next time. And as always, ciao, a dopo.
Ciao, ciao.
Ciao.